This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Brett, for the warm introduction. Do you remember me? I was here 6 years ago. So before we begin, I'm going to give you a little test on what I said 6 years ago. Okay, we're going to start with the first 10-minute segment. Could anybody recite word for word? Does anybody remember anything I spoke about 6 years ago? Good, because I'm going to repeat again what I said 6 years ago. Actually, what was most memorable for me 6 years ago, and I remember this very clearly, there was a boy standing here, and he was praying with so much devotion and so much connection to God. I was so inspired. By the way, that boy was Rabbi Brett's son, right, if I remember correctly. And I even mentioned it in one of the books. So I have very fond memories of being here in Capetown. And I have such fond memories that I convinced 15 Americans to join me this time. And from New York. And it's not easy to sell people from New York to do anything. So that just shows you what a deep impression this beautiful community left on me. This Shabbos in South Africa and around the world is known as the Shabbos Project. So we're going to speak about Shabbos. And let's try to understand in a very profound way the significance of Shabbos. We know that Shabbos commemorates that God created the world in 6 days and He rested on the seventh day. And yet Shabbos is given a very great pedestal in Jewish thought. Shabbos is so important that it actually has a spot in the Ten Commandments. And if you think about it, what's Shabbos doing in the Ten Commandments? I understand belief in one God, not to serve idols, not to take God's name in vain. These are the tenets, these are the fundamental principles of Judaism. But Shabbos is just a day of rest, a day of commemoration. The holiday of Sukkot is not in the Ten Commandments. Even Yom Kippur is not in the Ten Commandments. There's no day of commemoration that is in the Ten Commandments. Why the seventh day of the week? Why is Shabbos so important? Actually, according to the Talmud, the observance of Shabbos is considered the defining observance of the entirety of the whole Torah. Why would that be? After all, I believe in God. He knows it. I believe in Him with every fiber of my being. I love Him. Why do I actually have to take a day off to demonstrate my belief? But the Rambam tells us in the Mar Nevuchim, in the Guide for the Perplexed, you can have a beautiful necklace, and on this necklace you have pearls, and each pearl may be invaluable. You have pearl number 1, pearl number 2, pearl number 3, but guess what? If you don't have a knot at the end of your necklace, then as valuable as those pearls are, those pearls will not be maintained. They will no longer stay. The day will come when they will fall away and you won't know where they are. That is the role of Shabbos in Judaism. Yes, belief in God is a pearl. Not serving idols is a pearl. But what are you willing to do to demonstrate that you really believe? Because you could say you believe, and you could really believe. Shabbos is the knot at the end of the necklace that ensures and preserves the true devotion of the Jew. So Shabbos is the hallmark observance of the whole Torah. What I would like to share with you this evening is to upgrade and elevate our understanding of what Shabbos is. You know, if I were to ask you, how is Shabbos? How was your Shabbos? So it was good, it was bad, it was medium, it was mediocre, it was okay, it was fantastic. If I were to ask you, how was Shabbos? You should say, Rabbi, what kind of lame question was that? What kind of unsophisticated question was that? Let's say we just went to a very fine restaurant, the best fleishik restaurant in all of Capetown. Now, I got a little nervous, you know, when Rabbi Gilbert says he has kosher safari. I was like scratching my head. kosher. So what are we going to do? We're going to catch a rhinoceros? And in New York, they haven't figured out how to make that kosher. What exactly is the kosher safari? But if I were to ask you, how is the meal? So in this restaurant, you can't just say good or bad. You have the hors d'oeuvre, you have the entree, you have the dessert. A meal has different parts to it. You have a soup. It's not just good or bad. They're different components, they're different parts of a meal. What I would like to share with you is a very important idea that Shabbos is not one uniform entity, but there are different dimensions and elements of our appreciation and understanding of Shabbos that could best be appreciated by studying the various nuances of the prayers that we have Friday night as opposed to Shabbos morning, as opposed to Shabbos by Mincha. We know that there actually, on the Sabbath, on Shabbos, we have 4 primary prayers. We have the Friday night prayer, Maariv. We have the Shabbos morning prayer, Shachris, Musaf, and Mincha. And it's very interesting to observe that there's a little discrepancy between one particular word of Friday night as opposed to Shabbos day, as opposed to Shabbos by Mincha. And that word, it seems innocuous. You may jump over it, but it's a very telling word. Friday night, we say, V'yanuchu va. They, the Jewish people, will rest on her. V'yanuchu va Yisrael. The Jewish people will rest in her. Shabbos is called she. Shabbos morning, we say, V'yanuchu vai. They will rest in him. Shabbos is called he. Shabbos by Mincha, we say, V'yanuchu vam. They will rest in them. Shabbos is called them. So will the real Shabbos please stand up and identify itself? Are you she? Are you he? Or are you them? Next, we'll move on from that one rather quickly. You know, on Yom Tov, we have one uniform liturgy for all of the various tefillos. Ata b'chartanu mikol ha'amim, ahavta isanu v'ratzi sabanu. Is that the tune they use in Capetown? Okay, good. That's the Shemona Esrei we use Yom Tov at night, Yom Tov in the morning, Yom Tov by Mincha. It's the same exact Shemona Esrei, all 3 tefillos. When it comes to Shabbos, and by the way, during the week, it's the same Shemona Esrei, night, morning, afternoon, Shachris, Mincha, Marav. When it comes to Shabbos, though, we have a different liturgy for each tefillah. Friday night, we say, Ata Kidashta, you sanctified. Shabbos morning, we say, Yismach Moshe, Moses rejoiced. By Musaf, we say, Tikanta Shabbos, you affix the Shabbos. Shabbos by Mincha, we say, Ata Echad v'Shimcha Echad, you are one and your name is one. Why did our sages formulate 4 different liturgies for the 4 different prayers of Shabbos? Yom Tov, it was good enough to have one liturgy for all. But Shabbos, each specific tefillah has its own unique and special liturgy. Why did they do that? Here's another question. We know by each of the Shabbos meals, we have how many chalos? 2. 2 chalos. We have 2 Friday night, 2 Shabbos day, 2 by Shalosh Shudas. Actually, there's a very interesting concept that the Shabbos meals bring blessing. The 6 chalos that we have over Shabbos, 2, 2, and 2, bring blessing to the 6 days of the week. So by being careful to eat those 3 meals and 2 loaves by each meal in sanctity, we breathe life and holiness into all 6 days of the week. There's a rule in halacha, it's called Ein Ma'avirin al HaMitzvahs. You cannot pass over a mitzvah. If you have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, you can't walk by it to do a different mitzvah. For instance, we know in the morning, men put on talis and tefillin. What do we do first? First talis, and then tefillin. First we put on the talis, and then we put on the tefillin. Why do we first put on talis and then tefillin? Many reasons. One of them is we like to go up in kedusha. Tefillin has more holiness, so we start with talis, and then we go up in holiness, and we put on the tefillin. So we first put on the talis, and we make sure that the talis is the first thing we encounter in the bag, and the tefillin is not closer to us. Because if you touch your tefillin before the talis, you are obligated to put on the tefillin before the talis. Ein ma'avirin al mitzvahs. You cannot pass over doing a mitzvah. So, these two chalos that we have on Shabbos, we're breaking the challah, we're going to make hamotzia on one of the chalas. Which challah do we make hamotzia on? So you would expect we're obligated to cut the top challah. After all, it's closest to us, and we don't want to violate ein ma'avir and al mitzvahs, not to pass over the mitzvah. And indeed, that's what we do Shabbos day. We make the blessing on the top challah. But Friday night, we make the blessing on the bottom challah. Why do we make the blessing on the bottom challah? And actually, isn't that a violation of we're passing over the top challah to get to the bottom challah? So what we do is we position the bottom challah closest to us so that we're not passing by the top challah and violating ein ma'avir. But why do we do that? Why Friday night do we break the bottom challah and Shabbos day do we break the top challah? These are all very perplexing customs. Friday night, it's her. Shabbos day, it's him. Shabbos by mincha, it's them. What's the meaning of all this? So let me start by sharing with you a very fundamental idea of the essence of Shabbos. You know, we have many different relationships with God. God is our king. God is our father. God is also our wife. We are married to God. Now, Jewish marriage has different phases to it. The first phase of Jewish marriage is Kiddushin, Erusin, betrothal, where you have a formal arrangement. The man has a formal arrangement with the woman. He gave her, let's say, kesef. He gave her something of value. And that forges a relationship between them. And she is now prohibited to marry anybody else. However, the marriage has not been consummated yet because they did not go under the chuppah. That is called nisuin. That is when they are fully married. So there's kiddushin, there's nisuin, but the marriage is not yet consummated until husband and wife live together in the same house, and then the marriage is consummated. And that is when they do yichud. That is when they go into privacy, just him and her. So these are the three stages of marriage. Kiddushin, nisuin. Nisuin is also called chuppah, and yichud. Well, if we're married to God, what do you think? You know, one day it's just, he's our boyfriend and we're the girlfriend, and then the next day we're fully married? No. There has to be stages to the relationship. So God will have to give us kiddushin, the first stage of the marriage. There has to be something called nisuin, chuppah. And then there has to be yichud. And indeed, all three stages are reenacted every Shabbos. Friday night is the Kiddushin between the Almighty, the groom, and Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people, the bride. Friday night, God gives us Kiddushin. He begins the process. It is Erusin. This is the initiation of the relationship between God, the Almighty, and the Jewish people. Shabbos morning is the Nisuin, is the Chuppah. And Shabbos by Mincha is the Yichud, is the complete unity between God and the Jewish people. When do you think then is the holiest, most sanctified, most intimate moments of Shabbos? When do you think that would be? Shabbos by Mincha. It's very interesting, Friday night we make Kiddush. Shabbos morning we make Kiddush. By the third meal, by Suda Shlishit, by Shalosh Shudas, we don't make Kiddush. There's no kais, there's no cup of wine. Why? Why is there no cup of wine by Shalosh Shudas? The answer is Friday night is the Kiddushin between the Almighty and the Jewish people. That's the first stage of marriage. Have you ever been to a traditional Jewish marriage where there are actually 2 cups of wine? First, the rabbi will make the blessing on the cup. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, b'hirei pri hagafen, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, al ha'arayos, v'asanos ha'arusais. That's Berchas Erusin. So the first stage of marriage has a cup of wine. So Friday night, we have a cup of wine. That's corresponding to Kiddushin. Then at every traditional marriage, there's another cup of wine. At the chuppah, at the stage which is known as nisuin, and therefore we also have a cup of wine by Shabbos morning. But in the yichud room, after the chuppah, when the chassan and kala go into the privacy and seclude themselves, just him and her, there's no cup of wine there. Therefore there's no cup of wine by the third meal, by Suda Shlishis. That's the first understanding of Shabbos. So Shabbos is renewing our commitment and our love and our devotion to the Almighty. Friday night is the Kedushin, Shabbos morning is the Nesuin, Shabbos by Mincha is the Yichud. So if somebody asks, how was the wedding? Good. That's what they say in New York, good. But if you want to give a more elaborate, fuller response, you say, what part of the wedding are you referring to? Are you referring to the Kedushin? Are you referring to the Chuppah? Are you referring to the Simchas Chasan Mekala? Shabbos has many components to it. And now, here's an interesting idea. At the traditional Jewish wedding, the way the wedding is observed is the guy is in a room by himself with his friends. In New York, we call it the Chasan Tish. What do they refer to it? It's the groom's room, okay? The Kala, now what kind of chair is the Chasan sitting at? He's lucky if they found like some kind of folding chair rusty folding chair in the corner. What kind of food do they serve by the groom? Old sponge cake. Expired alcohol, you know? If you want the good food, you got to go to where the bride is. The bride is sitting there on this white throne with flowers bedecking her, and she's wearing her crown, and she's surrounded by all her friends. So basically the guy is like, they treat him like he's lucky he's invited, and all eyes are on the Kala. The focus is on the Kala. At the time of the Kedushin, the focus is on her. Once they stand under the chuppah and they come out of the chuppah, what does King David say? Vehu kichatan yotze mechupato. And like the groom walking down the chuppah. Hey, where did she go? What do you mean like the groom coming out of the chuppah? Where's the kala? The kala has changed her last name from her maiden name to his name. She's now subsumed under his identity. You don't like that? The kala and the chatan, she is subsumed in the identity of the chasan. But then in the yichud room, it's the unity of the two together. Friday night is the Kedushin. Friday night, the focus is on the first element of marriage, is on the erosin. At the time of Kedushin, we mentioned, all eyes are on the Kala. The focus is on the Kala. She's the star. She's the center of attention. Therefore, Shabbat is called V'yanuchu ba. You rest in her. It's a she. The focus is on her. Because we're focused on Shabbos, we're treating Shabbos as a Kedushin. And therefore, the element of Shabbos that is emphasized is the feminine element. V'yanuchu ba. Shabbos morning is the chuppah. The chuppah is the full marriage arrangement. Now she is subsumed in his identity. Therefore, Shabbos is referred to as him. Shabbat by Mincha is the yichud, is the unity of the two, and therefore Shabbos is called them, the two of them together. That is the explanation for the discrepancy. V'yanuchu ba, she, Friday night. Him, Shabbos day. Them, Shabbos by Mincha. But friends, there's another entire stream of understanding that is taking place on every Shabbat. Did you know that in the history and the destiny of the Jewish people, there are 3 historic Sabbaths? The first historic Sabbath was after God created the world in 6 days. He created the heavens, He created the earth, He created the trees and the plants, He created the sun and the moon, He created animals, He created the big 5. He created man. And God rested on the 7th day. That is called Shabbat Bereshit. Shabbos Bereshis. That is the first historic Shabbos. The rest after the creation of the world. The next historic Shabbos is called Shabbat Matan Torah. Shabbat Matan Torah was the Sabbath that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. The Gemara teaches us, Hakol Modim, everyone agrees, Shabbos Nitna Torah. The Torah was given on Saturday. When God came down in the year 2448, and He gave the Torah to 3 million Jews, that was the year 2048. It was a Saturday, it was a Sabbath, it was a Shabbat. That was the second historic Shabbos in history. Shabbat Matan Torah. And then there will be a third historic Shabbos. And that is Shabbos of the future. Shabbos of the days of Mashiach. That is called Shabbat La'atid Lavo. Shabbat of the future. So therefore, Friday night corresponds to Shabbat Bereshit. Shabbos of the creation of the world. Therefore we say, Ata Kidashta. We focus on the creation of the world. Did you notice Friday night? The main subject matter of the tefillot of Shabbat are the creation of the world. Shabbos morning, the emphasis of the tefillah is the Saturday of the giving of the Torah. The main theme of all the tefillot of Shabbos day is the giving of the Torah. Yismach Moshe b'matnat chelko. Moshe will rejoice with the gift that God gave of the Torah. Did you know that all the tefillahs that we say Shabbos morning, the main theme is the giving of the Torah? Who remembers? After Baruch Hu on Shabbos day, we have a piyut, Kel Adon. Are you familiar with that piyut? Kel Adon al kol hama'asim, Baruchim varach b'fi kol neshama. Why do we say that Shabbos day? What's that doing in the Siddur Shabbos day? We don't say it on Thursdays or Mondays or Tuesdays or any other day. We don't even say it on Yom Tov. Why do we say it on Shabbos? Here's the secret of Kel Adon HaKol HaMasim. Kel Adon is a piyut. It starts with 10 words. Kel Adon al Kol HaMasim. Baruch Varach b'fi kol neshama. 10 words. That corresponds to the 10 commandments. We then say 72 words. Take my word for it. 72 words. Because when God gave us the Torah, He gave it with His special 72 letter name. God gave us the Torah with the 72 letter name. And who did He give it to? Shavach Noisnim Loi Kol Tzava Maraim Tiferes Ugulas Rafim Lefanim V'Chayos HaKodesh. 12 words to the 12 tribes. You know that every single word in the Siddur has powerful, mystical, Kabbalistic power. That when you say these words, even if you don't fully understand their meaning, it creates effectuations throughout the universe. The reason we say this piyut Shabbos day is because we're referring to the giving of the Torah. God gave us 10 commandments with 72 words to the 12 tribes. All the tefillot that we say Shabbos day are about the giving of the Torah. Who remembers when we put back the Torah Shabbos day, we say a special chapter of Tehillim. We don't say this during the week. We don't say this Monday and Thursday. We say this only Shabbos day. Who remembers? What do we say Shabbat day when we put back the Torah? Mizmar LeDavid. Why do we say Mizmar LeDavid Shabbos day? Mizmar LeDavid has 18 references to the name of God. Havu Lashem Ne'elim, Havu Lashem Kavod Bos. 18 times we say Yud Kei Vav Kei, the 4-letter name of Hashem. 18 times 4 is 72, a reference to the fact that Shabbat day God gave us the Torah with the 72-letter name. Then Shabbat by Mincha refers to Shabbat La'atid Lavo, Shabbat of the future, Shabbat in the days of the coming of Mashiach. Therefore we say, Ata Echad, God, you are one. V'shimcha Echad, your name is one. We talk about the unity of God and the Jewish people that will be achieved when Mashiach comes. So we have these two different streams of ideas of how to explain the different texts of liturgy for the various tefillahs of Shabbos. One approach is, Friday night is the Kiddushin, the first stage of marriage. Shabbos day is the Nesuin, the second stage of marriage. Shabbos by Mincha is the Yichud, the final stage of marriage. That's one approach. Another approach is Friday night corresponds to Shabbat Bereshis, the Shabbat of the creation. Shabbos morning corresponds to Shabbat Matan Torah, Shabbos of the giving of the Torah. And then Shabbos by Mincha corresponds to Shabbat la'atid lavo, Shabbat of the future. Comes the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon says that these two streams of ideas actually fuse together and work together to produce one majestic approach to the various stages of the sanctity of Shabbos. Friday night, we're commemorating the creation of the world. Who did God create the world for? Bereshit bara Elokim, b'shvil Yisrael shenikru Reshit. God created the world for the Jewish people. God's objective in creation is achieved by the Jewish people. So when God created the world, even though we weren't there yet, but that was the initiation of our relationship with God. So therefore, Friday night, which corresponds to the creation of the world, is the first stage of our relationship with the Almighty. Shabbos morning is when God gave us the Torah. That corresponds to the chuppah, the nesuin, the full marriage of the Jewish people with God. And Shabbat by Mincha is Shabbat of the future. That will be the ultimate unity, the yichud of God and the Jewish people. So actually, if somebody asks you, how is Shabbat? So you're going to say, well, are you referring to the Kiddushin part of Shabbat? You're referring to the Friday night? Because if you're sensitive to the various discrepancies and practices of Friday night, they are all understood in the context that Friday night is the Kiddushin. Friday night, a Jew should have one type of feeling of sanctity. Shabbos morning, you've, so to speak, elevated your connection to God to the level of chuppah. Actually, it's very interesting. Halachically, does anybody know which kiddush is more important? Friday night or Shabbos morning? Halachically, Friday night is more important. You know that the kiddush Friday night is biblical. The kiddush Shabbos day is rabbinic. Friday night kiddush is biblical. Shabbos day, it's rabbinic. Therefore, we give the Kiddush Shabbos day a very unusual term. We call it Kiddusha Rabbah, the great Kiddush. It's a euphemism. In Aramaic, it's called Lashon Sagina, a euphemism meaning it's not really a big Kiddush. Like we refer to a blind person, we call him Sagi Nahar. He has a lot of light, meaning he can't see a thing. So Shabbos day, we call it the big Kiddush. Why? Because it's not a big Kiddush. It's not really important. All you need to do really is take a cup of wine and say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam bo yipri hagafen. That's it, and you're done. Friday night, you have to recite the sanctity of the Shabbat. Friday night is much more important. That's halachically. But Kabbalistically, mystically, the Kiddush Shabbos morning is actually Kiddusha Rabbah, a higher level of sanctity. Because Friday night, our relationship with God was only Kiddushin, but Shabbos morning, we actually formalize the relationship to a greater sense, and it really is Kiddusha Rabbah. It really is a greater Kiddush. Now, this also explains the positioning of the challah Friday night as opposed to Shabbos day. See, Friday night, the emphasis is on the Kiddushin. The emphasis is on the Kala. The emphasis is on her. In Kabbalistic thought, the positioning of her is the lower one, or below. And therefore, we use the bottom Chala. Shabbos day, the emphasis is on him, the Chatan. Therefore, we use the top Chala. By Suda Shlishit, we use both Chalot. Shabbos is an exercise in reenacting and reinvigorating our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our connection to God. And therefore, there's so many different nuances and discrepancies that can only be understood in this context. That the Friday night is the sanctity that we experience upon the initiation of our relationship with Hashem. Shabbos morning is a fuller consummation of that relationship. And among the great tzaddikim, among the righteous saints, so to speak, when they would sit around the table at the closing moments of Shabbos, and they would sing, songs of love of Hashem, Yedid Nefesh of Harachaman, that we sing by Shalosh Shudas. We call that time of the week Rava de Ravin, the love of all loves. Because what's happening in the closing moments of Shabbat is really a full consummation of the relationship that Knesset Yisrael, that the Jewish people has with the Almighty. This is a gift that God gave to His beloved nation, the Jewish people. So every Friday and every Thursday, and when we're preparing for Shabbat, we're not just preparing for a day off, we're preparing for a wedding. We prepare with love. We anticipate the coming of the Shabbat like we're waiting for the great wedding. And this really elevates and enhances our appreciation for Shabbat. So I want to thank everyone for inviting me to this wonderful Kehillah. I want to thank Rabbi Brett for opening up our Sameach for this important lecture. I want to thank Rabbi Gilbert for making arrangements to bring me all the way. New York is on a planet very far in a different galaxy, and I had to get on a special machine called an airplane. And I went onto the airplane, and I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there. And after many, many years, I finally landed in South Africa. But it was worthwhile to come here after 6 years to be able to share some thoughts about Shabbat, which is really the greatest day of our lives. I remember somebody once came to me and said, Rabbi, I'm feeling like I have this dark cloud that hovers over my head and nothing is going right. And could you give me a blessing? I said, we Jews, God has already given us a blessing. We say, go to the Sabbath. Kihi makar habracha. It's the source of all blessing. I said, all we need to do is embrace the Sabbath, wait for her, cherish her, observe her, and all blessing will flow through her. So the more we're able to show our devotion, and devotion is not just the feelings we have. Devotion means getting the details right. If you want to make somebody happy, it's very nice you have wishes to make them happy, and you want to make them happy. But the only way you could really make someone happy is if when they give you instructions, you get the details just right. So when a person thinks, I really want to make God happy, my heart is overflowing with love toward Him. Great. So make sure that when He gives you all the minutia of how to observe the Shabbos, whether it's what we can do, what we can't do, what activities are permitted, what are not, what is not permitted, it is the carefulness in the minutia of the Sabbath which shows whether we're on the winning team. So even if a person could upgrade an extra hour of observance or an extra practice of observance, that will go the longest way to show God our true devotion to Him. So may we all merit to be among those who cherish the Shabbos, and through that Hashem should bestow on all of us great blessing, happiness, and success, good health. Thank you so very much, and bracha v'atzlacha. Thank you. Yeah, go for it.
Just to conclude and to thank a couple of people that made this come together. Firstly, just want to thank my good friend Rabbi Danny Brett. We went to Kollel together. And we've spent many a year discussing different things. We spent some time in Eretz Yisrael going on a Yarchei Kala to our Rebbe, Rabbi Berkowitz. And Rabbi Brett is an inspirational human being, someone that I really look up to. And the fact that he has donated his life and his family's life and everyone into Capetown, into community, just it's a big, big honor to just be able to be part of this evening that we've done, and just to wish Rabbi Brett and his family bracha and hatzlacha in all that they do, and to be able to continue all of the learning of Torah that goes on in Capetown. And please God, Hashem should bless you and your family in all that you do. And to my friend Steve Lips, just want to say a big thank you to him, and to the Capetown Kollel that has been initiated under his auspices, and together with all the other people that are joining into that, to be able to bring Torah to Capetown. Really, it's an endeavor which isn't an easy endeavor. It's not something which comes easily, but anything that is going to be a kesher shel kaima, that has a cume in this world, doesn't come easy. And so please God, it should be able to bring Torah to this community, and Hashem should bless you and your family and everything that you're doing in order to be able to marbet Torah to Klal Yisrael. And then just finally to Sameach that are also here. They have given us of the beautiful base Midrash to be able to host this Shiur today. They've renovated it beautifully. I can see how wonderful it looks. And please God, always continue to build this community, and the community in Capetown should always continue to grow from strength to strength. And finally, last but obviously not least, to Rabbi Glatstein Schlitter, who has come and spent years on an aeroplane to get here. And we really appreciate it very much, because it is a long trip from New York. And all the people that came along to be able to join on this wonderful trip that we've got over here, a trip of chizuk for the community, chizuk for the South African Capetown community, the Joburg community, and the extended community that are all going to be able to watch from a distance as to what goes on over here, and all the Torah that's being learned. Please God, it should be a schus for Rabbi Glatstein, for your family, for your parents, your children, and everyone that has the schus to be able to learn and listen to your Torah. Please God, you should continue to be able to bring Torah to all of those that are able to hear all the beautiful Torah that you have to say. And please God, it should continue for many, many years. And we want you to be able to come back to South Africa many times more to be able to give chizuk to us. And please God, we look forward to that. If anyone is interested in buying any of Rabbi Glatstein's books, we have a couple of books over here. Please, afterwards, you're welcome to come and chat to me. I can just tell you the English books over there go in dollars. It's $40. We can just make payment through the rabbi's website, rabbidg.com, over there. So we'll just bring out the books. Anyone who wants to buy them. There's also Hebrew books. Those go for $35, and the English ones are Art Scroll published, and those go for $40. And if anyone's interested in any of the other publications that we don't have, you can just talk to me, and we'll be able to organize that. So just a big thank you again to all of you that came for the Shiur. I know, we could be doing other things, but you committed yourself, and a big thank you to everyone, and hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and thank you for joining us.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.